I'm really pleased to be joined on the Crispin Flintoff show by Professor Haim Bresheeth. How you doing, Haim?
I'm fine, thank you.
Now, I asked if you'd come on because this peace deal, as it's called in Gaza, you've been sort of discussing it and looking into it.
You know, the plan Trump is really ingenious. It demands that the people who defended themselves against genocide will shed their arms, while the genociders will get new arms from everyone in the West, including the country in which we are residing now. It requires the rebuilding of Gaza, but the only country that will not do anything about it is the country that destroyed it. It requires the services of most countries in the Middle East in coming to agreement and in guaranteeing it. But the one group of people who are not making part of the working of the agreement are, of course, the Palestinians. And so it goes, you know. There are no dates, there are no lines, there are no conditions. And every point is, in a sense, also annulling the point before or after it. So this is one of the most incredible surrender agreement that any group of people was asked to sign. And then we have to ask, why did Hamas agree to sign it? And then, you know, the question is really, what else could they have done? They are facing the strongest forces on this planet. No one is supporting the Palestinians apart from Yemen and to a degree South Africa. No one is supplying them with arms because they don't need to defend themselves. Only the Israelis need to defend themselves. So we have here an example of ridiculous, ridiculous front of the Arab countries, the Western countries, Turkey, and even China and Russia have joined in this agreement that's supposed to bring peace to Gaza. This is what Trump was talking about, bringing peace to Gaza. There isn't anywhere in Gaza that people can live. When the bombing stops, the disease will start. There are no hospitals. There is no housing. There's no clean water. You can feed people if you try. There are no roads for the lorries. And basically, how are 2 million people, now less than 2 million, how are they going to survive until there is some hole in the wall they can fit into? I don't think that humanity has ever seen anything like this. So to speak about this as an agreement that will bring peace is a travesty, I think. It's disturbing. And the fact that no one thought that the Palestinians can run their own life is also evidence of the racism behind the group of states that drafted this. But I think it was mainly drafted in Jerusalem. If we actually analyze the 20-point plan, it'll take us a very long time. People have done this in very learned articles. I've done so myself. But in the end, you get the point after the first or second point, you get the point that the Palestinians are excluded from a discussion and action about the future, that they are excluded from any arrangements of that future, any control of that future. They are excluded from humanity in the sense that they don't have a right to defend themselves. They don't have a right to their housing, to their hospitals, to their schools, to their mosques, to their clinics, to their water, to electricity, to roads, etc. Um, and I don't think that we should honor Trump and Netanyahu by analyzing the agreement, which is obviously a piece of rubbish that is just a way of controlling the Palestinians after Israel failed to control Hamas. It's quite clear that the strongest army in the Middle East has not managed to decimate Hamas after 2 years. I think that in itself is quite an amazing fact. So, how that army, which is now preparing to attack Iran and some other countries, is going to be successful in that task is, you have to laugh. Yeah, you can't defeat Hamas, you can't defeat the Houthis, and you're going to attack Iran. So, what will happen is enormous damage in Iran and also in Israel. And that's why the agreement had to be signed in a hurry, because the Israelis need to free their air force and army for the attack on Iran. It's really nothing to do with the Palestinians. So I think that's what's behind it, if you want. And that's why it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense, because it's not going to go beyond the first or second stage. And so you don't need to work it out in any logical order. You don't need to give dates. Actually, you do not give dates because you know that you will not meet them.
Well, you mentioned that Israel's in a bit of disarray internally. In what way is that shown?
Well, Israel is a gutted society. First of all, a society that is democratically supporting genocide is, to say the least, not a healthy society. It's a society in social psychosis, which is exactly where Israel is. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear Israel has a right to defend itself every 3 seconds when everyone mentions the word genocide. They say there is no genocide, we're just defending ourselves. Well, that's not a sign of sanity, I would argue. But there are even more important reasons. Israel is divided in for and against Netanyahu. Those who are against Netanyahu hate him, I think, like they hate the Palestinians. The hatred toward the Palestinians is shared by all Israeli Jews practically. The Tel Aviv University came up with a figure of 97%. I would go along with that figure. So obviously, this can't be the case. A nation supporting a genocide by 97% is obviously traumatized off the scale. They are not really in touch with reality. And every time that somebody from the Israeli government speaks and spouts more hatred and, the end of days, promising the end of everything, it's not enough for them that they have removed every building practically still standing in Gaza. They've killed a few 100,000 Palestinians. They have maimed hundreds of thousands. That's not enough. So every time that a minister is coming on the television, one needs to say they are not really balanced. Yeah. But if that's not enough for them, they are now going to attack Iran. There is talk about attacking Turkey, for God's sake. They're attacking Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen on a daily basis, this is not a normal society. Secondly, because they are holding so many men and some women under arms, and some numbers claim that up to 1 million Israelis have already left Israel. Huge swathe of Israelis have arrived in Cyprus, in America, in many European countries, in Berlin. So the Israelis are now voting with their feet, not because they are anti-Zionist or because they are principled about genocide. They just want a normal life for their children. I think that's okay. I'm not criticizing anyone that wants a normal life for their children. The fact that they don't care about what happens in Gaza is sad because they don't understand that there won't be any normal life for their children if there isn't any normal life for Palestinian children. Now, let's ask the question. There are a million children in Gaza. They didn't have a life. They didn't have any normal life for a single day in uh, in their childhood. Now, these are the children that are still alive. Yeah, they are. Let's say even some of them have not suffered physical injury, but medically, mentally, they cannot be living any normal life because there is nowhere to live it, and there is nothing normal about Gaza, and there is nothing normal about what is promised to them. If Israel is looking at this reality that it has created and is not frightened, they are indeed not in contact with reality. The next generation of refugees is now growing in Gaza, and they don't even have where to hide and what to eat and how to protect themselves from disease and who to speak to get support. I mean, this is in the light of day, in the view of the whole of humanity. I don't think that's normal. Israel pretends to be normal, but most of its industry is not working. There isn't a single tourist. Some of the towns still stand empty since the 7th of October because the people wouldn't return to them. Soldiers who were hurt in the battle, tens of thousands of them have PTSD, are not getting the support that Israel is more than capable to give them. So if this happens in Israel, people with PTSD that fought for the genocide side are not actually getting support, how will the people of Gaza get any support? What from the hospitals that don't exist, from the doctors that were murdered by Israel? Who will report what happened there? The hundreds of reporters that were killed by the Israelis, targeted one after another every time that they tried to tell the West the news. I think what we are now facing is not a better time for the Palestinians. And we've got to face this squarely and say it is in the interest and the duty of the West to resolve the problem of Palestine. The problem is called Zionism. And I say Zionism because the problem is not a ceasefire. You know, Crispin, that Israel has never kept a ceasefire it's signed to. It's never happened. So how long will this ceasefire last? Until it's no longer necessary. Where is the Israeli army retreating to? We don't know. When will it complete its retreat? It's not important. Who will police this? Tony Blair. Every question that you ask is getting a terrible answer. And, the people that are responsible for it are the US, the UK. Of course, everyone knows that Israel is responsible for it. But Israel can't work for a week without the US, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, etc. None of them is yet in the ICC or ICJ. This is where they belong, all those leaders, including our own in the UK. They haven't yet stopped supplying a genociding state. This is illegal. This is immoral. This is illogical. It makes no sense. It does not support life in the UK or life in the US or life anywhere. So that's why I'm saying the plan is just a joke. It's not meant seriously. If it was meant seriously, it would be written differently. It will be negotiated with the Palestinians. It will be negotiated in good faith, with dates, with borders, with a horizon, a political horizon that says, we all, most of the UN members said that we need a Palestinian state. Okay, so we have, I don't know, a year, 6 months to do that. We'll put a protection force that will protect the Palestinians until they can protect themselves. There are things that can be done and that should be done, and none of them will be done. I think that is what I'm thinking the plan is about. In other words, not to do what was necessary to do. I have slightly rewritten the peace plan so that it makes more sense to the viewers. Basically, um, the old one has 20 points, and this one also has 20 points. So the first one is a 20-point application form for the Nobel Peace Prize was put forward by President Trump. Unfortunately, it failed, and another MAGA supporter from the Caracas branch got the prize. Maybe next year, after the Iran war, he can apply again. A ceasefire, this is point two, which will not be honored with total impunity, is guaranteed by the plan. No dates are important, no lines in the sand, no penalties for breaking any of the points. Point four is an agreement worked out by Israel with help from the US, UK, France, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, 5 Jewish Zionist real estate barons, Tony Blair, the mafia, and the Women's Institute. The Palestinians need not apply. For them is to sign on the dotted line. Point five is after the great vote of most members of the UN for the recognition of a Palestinian state, the plan has fixed the date of the inauguration of the state for the first day after the second coming, or for the end of times, whichever comes first. Point six is the ceasefire will last as long as it needs to last, and then Israel will break it because it needs to attack one or more of the following: Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Sudan, Qatar, Turkey, Cyprus, Pakistan, India, China, or the Malvinas Islands. Point seven is A further ceasefire may be necessary when Israel is losing some battle, and that will be decided by President Trump as the emperor of the new clothes empire. 8 is Hamas will be shedding its arms, which will be given to Israel to help it defend itself. Point 9 is obvious. The Gulf state will be required to finance and rebuild the kibbutzim destroyed on October 7th in payment for the building permits of the new Gaza casino strip along the seashore in the new Trump town. The US National Guard will be sent to guard the peace, and ICE will police the streets, grabbing Palestinians lingering in the streets and sending them to Guantanamo. Point 8 is also very obvious. All Palestinians freed according to the agreement in the first phase will be rearrested by the start of the second phase, in case Hamas repeats its feat of the 7th of October, in which case the agreement automatically reverts to the 2-year genocide. Point 11, Israel will vacate areas it feels like vacating, and if and when it feels like it, and moves to a new line decided by Tony Blair and anyone else that happens to be around. Point 12 is to resolve the hunger in Gaza. Israel will allow 600 lorries a day into Gaza. Tony Blair will decide how many of them can carry supplies and how many will carry the bodies of the dead from the new IDF bombing. Point 13 is also very important. The Gaza Strip will be run by the Sicilian Mafia, which will be reporting daily to Tony Blair and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Point 14, that Palestinians will need to pay reparations to Israel for the damage done on the 7th of October by the 28 Israeli Apache helicopters shooting at all and sundry. Point 15, Hamas will undertake to help Israel in its war on Iran and will help to run the government in Tehran after a regime change. Point 16, the annexation of the West Bank will be delayed to a few weeks after Christmas to allow peace celebration in the West. Point 17 is Israel will undertake not to blow up the mosques in Jerusalem until after the secret date to be decided by Tony Blair, so as to keep the peace in Jerusalem until it is no longer required. And the last 3 points, 18, the PLO will recognize the inalienable right of Israel to defend itself by the use of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, mass starvation, total destruction, mass expulsions, and genocide. Point 19, this agreement cannot be changed by anyone apart from Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, J.D. Vance, Nigel Farage, and Elon Musk. Point 20, however, is the last condition is secret and will become known after the second coming. And I think that is probably more logical than the Trump plan.